All right, let's get into a little bit here on the CFL and the pay cut proposal. It was pitched out there that CFL is interested in getting back on the field for as much of a season as they possibly can, which we've already known for a long time. But 18 games is still possible, even if there is a July start. That would require the preseason being scrapped, a condensed regular season, and a flexible Grey Cup date right here in Hamilton, where we are recording from. My first thought when I read that was, do you have any idea how bad the football would be if you're not going to have a training camp or a preseason? You're going to throw guys out there. You're going to make them play every 5 days instead of every 6. And you're going to push the season deeper into November, December, and make it feel even stranger. Again, I'm all here for getting a season in. But if we got to miss a week or two in order to keep some form of normalcy with the scheduling so that the quality of the games is higher, that's my main concern when I read that storyline. But getting back out onto the field, the CFL has proposed to the CFLPA that players take a 20% pay cut across the board until you can get fans into the stands. Kyle, when you saw this headline, what was your first thought?
Ooh, obviously it sucks for CFL players because now they're asked to play football at a time where maybe their bodies are not used to playing football. And again, you spend a lifetime of playing the sport, but sitting out for this long can't be good for the body, and then getting thrown back in there after 2-3 weeks of training camp. I'm looking at this and thinking, man, if you're a CFL player, do you fight this, right? As a players association, say, no, we're not gonna take a 20% pay cut. But then what does that mean? Do you not have another season? Now that's 2 years where you're not playing football. And it's bad for the CFL at a time of crisis for the Canadian Football League. Maybe the players have to cave in a little. And I know that sounds awful, but if it's what's best for the CFL, like if you're a guy 26, 27 years old in the CFL and you were making $100,000 before the pandemic and they ask you to take a 20% pay cut for 1 year, do you do it knowing that, okay, I might keep the CFL around for another decade where I can make, that 100,000 for 3, 4, 5 years, obviously until we get fans back in the crowd. Now, here's the thing. When are we going to get fans back? Like, the more I see news about coronavirus, and not even the coronavirus, the vaccine rollout, I'm just like, we're not going to get fans anytime soon. If we keep going at the pace that we're going in terms of rolling out a vaccination, we're not going to play CFL football if it's, contingent on having people in the crowd and having some sort of money coming into teams. Like, this is ridiculous. But for players, you obviously do what's best for yourself, and what's best for them is maybe to play football. Because I don't think, right now a labor dispute is good for the CFL, and it might be the finishing blow to the league.
I agree, but here's my problem: is that this is very similar when we're talking about the employers versus the union or versus the labor. That baseball went through this last year, and the play in these situations is always to put the onus on the players, which is completely unfair. The players have the ability to stand their ground and to make the owners lose whatever amount of money that they want. That's just the reality of this. And there was a great article from 3 Down Nation this past week that John Hodge wrote, that there's a little snippet from it here I want to read. The CFL's business model is not broken. It's far from perfect, but it would be perfectly viable with better leadership that can explore new sources of revenue. Now, whether you want to fire everybody and change every owner and move every CEO out and completely overhaul the system, it's not realistic. So whatever, that's a bit of a throwaway line for me. But this is the important part. According to Frank Cosentino's book, A Passing Game, A History of the CFL, the league's gross revenue in 1976 was $12.9 million. This would equate to $59 million today with inflation. The league's television contract with the CBC was worth $1.5 million, and player spending was approximately $750,000 per team, which is $3.4 million in today's dollars. This means that CFL players got 52% of league revenue in 1976. Today, they receive approximately 27% less of the league revenue than they did in 1976. For comparison, NFL players will receive 48% of league revenue in 2021, while NHL and NBA players get 50%. CFL players get 25%. Already, of league revenue. Taking inflation into account, the CFL's annual revenue has quadrupled since 1976, and the value of its television contract has increased by 700%. Meanwhile, player costs have increased by little over 50%. So that to me is why I lean towards the players. Anyone who's frustrated, anybody who wants to take a stand, I'm not going to fault you guys. If you're a CFL player and you are bothered by this, like I saw Ricky Collins Jr. recently had a great season for Edmonton. He ends up retiring because he said he was asked to take a 33% pay cut by Edmonton. There's a lot of guys across the league. We've seen all the quarterbacks that have been restructuring their contracts, guys in the transactions page on CFL.ca that have been deleted and then re-added because their contract has been moved around and they've been reshaping it and signing bonuses here and there, and money up front, no money up front, money at the end of 2021 when we reach the finish line. However they shape this stuff, people are getting less money. That's the reality. They signed for less money. Now, on top of making less money, you're also asking them to take a 20% pay cut. And here's the real nail in the coffin for me that I find frustrating, because you mentioned it here, Kyle. When is the CFL going to have fans in the stands? Well, I see all this article stuff come out about what's happening with the CFL and the 20% pay cut that's being proposed. And the great thing about it is for the league and for the owners that if the players reject it, the players look like the assholes. They're not. Like, they're trying to make money for their families and do what's right by them. But here's the thing that really frustrated me when I saw this conversation this week. Farhan Lalji said on Derek Taylor's show, The Sports Cage on 620 CKRM this week, I do know the CFL is not expecting full stadiums at any point this season. Grey Cup notwithstanding, during the regular season, they're not expecting and are preparing for the scenario that will not allow them to have full fans in the stands. So in a couple of days here, we've had TSN's Dave Naylor saying 20% pay cut off the top for all these guys who have already taken pay cuts from league revenue, of which they're already not getting their fair keep across the board compared to other professional sports leagues. You're asking them to take more off the top while they don't have fans in the stands. And then we hear from another TSN insider, Farhan Lalji, that we're not expecting fans in the stands. So why would I sign up for that if I'm a CFL player? You're asking me to take less money again, with no promise of ever getting that money back, and you're assuming all of the same risks.
Yeah. Again, all the statistics that you just brought to the table in terms of where the CFL is today compared to where they were in 1977, it is concerning if you're a player, right? But I will say, and it's weird because I don't want to say it as an attack to the players, but you negotiated the deal. Like, you're negotiating, player revenue and what percentage you get, right? In terms of football related revenue,
they've
or whatever
been weak
term
over
the
time.
CFL use.
They've been weak over time, and it's whittled away at their ability to have that strength. So you're right, they have negotiated it, but it's almost like the inconsistency of the leadership of the union over time has whittled away at the strength of the union to the point where when baseball says bleep you to the owners, they can stand strong because they have a history of saying bleep you to the owners and playing hardball when needed. The CFL doesn't have a history of doing that. And anytime they do, people say shut up and get it out there on the field. And that's the weakness of this setup, is there's an innate disadvantage to the players every time this conversation comes up.
Yeah, I think you're right on that front. And also, when you look at the amount of money that CFL players are making, they're going into negotiations at a disadvantage, right? Because they can't afford to sit out a year, 2 years. And I'm talking about in the player dispute, not in the pandemic. And then that's how that collective bargaining agreement comes about, because players are going into it saying, hey, I need to put food on the table for my kids. Like, we have to play football and can't really go anywhere, right? Like, they can't really play football anywhere else. No player in the right mind is going to play in the CFL over the NFL, because obviously you're going to make way more money in the NFL than you are in the Canadian Football League.
Right.
So when you don't have another option to go to, it's not like a regular job, right? It's not like, hey, if I quit this, factory, I'll just go work at this factory. It's like, no, if I don't play in the CFL, I'm not playing professional football. I can go play in some spring league, some fan-controlled football league. Is it probably good for my future? No, it's probably going to mean close to the end of my football career. So that's where I'm coming at it from, right? Obviously, this is a deal that players negotiated, and maybe they should have fought a little bit harder. But again, like you said, they're going at it in a disadvantage. But yeah, like, this sucks for everybody, right? This sucks for the Canadian Football League and the players. Here's the thing. The owners of the Canadian Football League, they're going to be fine. No owner of the Canadian Football League solely uses the revenue that they're generating from football to live up the lifestyle that they've been living for, 20, 30 years. Like Bob Young is going to be fine after this pandemic. He's going to be fine after maybe even the CFL going away. He's going to be, obviously still a very rich man. But for CFL players, they're the ones that take the hit on all of this, and it sucks.
The margins are always tighter for the players, and the onus is always put on the players. And in this league, I'm not buried in a corner where I'm only ever going to defend the players, because I think there are moments where there have been some errors made in negotiations at times. But when you really look at this specific situation, I think this is a starting point. This is a conversation starter. This ain't even close to being what's fair, what's right, and what's possible. And I understand none of this is fair to either side, because you're going to lose money no matter what. But the idea of losing money at the front end on contract signings, renegotiations, losing money once again off the top, and then not having any guarantee of making that money back and assuming all those same risks, that's a tough pill to swallow for sure.